Hi, beautiful people. Welcome back. So, as you know, it is almost time for Jen Shaw from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City to get sentenced for her crimes in the money laundering scheme, the telemarketing fraud scheme. And the internet is abuzz because two things happened recently where the Department filed a memorandum of a letter that was sent to the sentencing judge. That was done on December 23rd, which is just recently, just before Christmas. And we also have the internet where, talking about how Jen is asking for her sentence to be reduced because she's facing up to 10 years or more, I think. But she's asking for it to be reduced to 3 years, 36 months. So, again, it's coming around. People are asking exactly what did she do and how did she do it. So I went into the Justice Department website, Justice Department News, and I looked up the case. And there is a detailed press release of exactly what was done. And this was released on Monday, July 2022. So before I read the letter that was sent to the sentencing judge, I'm going to go back and read the press release. And then, during the reading, I might just stop and make a couple of comments or whatever. And also, there is a TikTok and Instagram page that I follow called the Bravo Docket. And it's run by two attorneys, and they go in and they break it down. They're actually looking at the latest memorandum. They have some comments regarding that, which I'm going to read to you. And they also looked at the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City that we saw. Latest two episodes where the ladies went on the yacht and Jen threw Angie K's shoes in the water and she pushed Melissa. They're going to break it down and tell us how many misdemeanors did Jennifer do within those two episodes. So first thing, I'm going to read the press release from July 11th of 2022, and then we're going to move on to the letter that was sent to the judge, and then we're going to look at the Bravo Docket breakdown of stuff that's going on. So this video is going to be a little bit long, but bear with me because I'm sure it will be worth listening to. So let's get into it. So the first thing I have here is the press release. It says the United States, and this is public information, by the way. All you have to do is go to the Department of Justice and hit on news, type in her name, and it pops up. So it's easy to find. So what I have here, it says the United States Office, Southern District of New York, for immediate press release, Monday, July 11th, 2022, says, reality show cast member pleads guilty to running nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme. Damian Williams, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, announced that earlier today, Jennifer Shah pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud in connection with telemarketing. Oh, and another question was asked, why was she tried in New York State versus Utah or any other state? So during this press release, it's going to break it down as to why she was charged in New York. So it says, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said, Jennifer Shah was a key participant in a nationwide scheme that targeted elderly, vulnerable victims. These victims were sold false promises of financial security, but instead, Jennifer and her co-conspirators defrauded them out of their savings and left them with nothing to show for it. This office is committed to rooting out these schemes, whatever form they take. So that was a statement from the U.S. District Attorney Damian Williams. Oh, another thing that I found on the website is there is another case where it shows all of the co-conspirators. And that I will leave the link to the Department of Justice website, and you have to go and find that yourself because the case is actually sealed, but there are certain information on there that you could see. So then it goes on to say, the press release goes on to say, according to the allegation in the superseding indictment, and statements made during the plea and other proceedings in the case. From 2012 until March 2021, Jennifer Shah, together with others, collectively, the participants, quote unquote, carried out a wide range telemarketing scheme that defrauded hundreds of victims, the victims throughout the United States, many of whom were over the age 55, by selling those victims so-called quote unquote business services in connection with the victims' purported online businesses called the Business Opportunity Scheme. In order to perpetrate the Business Opportunity Scheme, participants, including Shah, engaged in a widespread, coordinated effort to traffic in lists of potential victims or leads, many of whom had previously made an initial investment to create an online business with other participants in the scheme. So they slowly reel you in and then they just hook you. So these are people who are looking to start online businesses. And most of these people were over 55. And because of the age, they're considered vulnerable adults. And therefore, that's why they're focusing on it so heavily. Of course, they will focus on it either way. But I think the rules are different based on the fact that the age of some of these people. She said, it goes on to read, Shah, among other things, sold leads to other participants for use by their telemarketing sales floor with the knowledge that the individuals they had identified as quote-unquote leads would be defrauded by the other participants, including by lying to victims about how much they would earn after purchasing the business services and the purported success of others who had purchased the services. Shah received as profit a share of the fraudulent revenue per the terms of their agreement with those participants. Shah often controlled each aspect of the frauds perpetrated by other participants on the individuals they had identified by, among other things, determine which quote-unquote coaching sales floor was permitted to pass the leads, choosing the firms to provide fulfillment services, that is, documents and records purporting to demonstrate that the services the participants claimed to provide to those victims were actual and legitimate, setting how much the downstream sales floor could charge, and determining which products each of the downstream sales floor could sell. So she was actually getting the leads for them and then directing them as to what services to sell these people, because she already did the preliminary not investigation, but she already checked out to see what they were really interested in. So if a person was interested in let's say having like a e-commerce store or something like that, she would know where to send this group of people versus others who are probably doing some sort of beauty product. She would know where to send these people. So she was just setting them up to get duped. And according to the documents that I was reading online, it says this was carried out in Manhattan, New Jersey, Arizona, Nevada, Las Vegas, and Utah. So it was multi-state scheme going on. All right, let's continue to read. In approximately 2017, Shah began operating a Manhattan-based sales floor that sold downstream business opportunity products to victims on lead lists provided by the defendant as part of the business opportunity scheme, the Manhattan sales floor. And that is why she was charged. Her trial is in Manhattan because she was using a Manhattan address to actually do her fraudulent scheme. So you're doing it in New York, you're going to get tried in New York. So she was basically in charge of this sales floor called the Manhattan sales floor. They had, in the other document I told you about, They had the Arizona sales floor. They had the New Jersey sales floor, the Las Vegas sales floor, and the Utah sales floor. So it was 5 different areas, a bunch of different people, and it was all a whole mix-up. So Jen was solely responsible for the Manhattan sales floor, and that is why she's been charged in Manhattan, and she's considered the head honcho of the Manhattan sales floor. So let's continue. It says, between 2018 and 2020, Shah controlled the day-to-day operation of the Manhattan sales floor. Where it says, among other things, Shah, with other participants, moved certain operations for the Manhattan sales floor to Kosovo. Now that's international now, to avoid law enforcement and regulatory scrutiny. The salespeople at the Manhattan sales floor engaged in the same fraudulent sales practices as other telemarketing floors in the business opportunity scheme, namely lying to and misleading victims into purchasing business opportunity products to ostensibly advance their non-existent online businesses. Shah undertook significant efforts to conceal her role in the business opportunity scheme. For example, Shah, among other things, incorporated her business entities using third parties' names and instructed other participants to do the same. Used and directed others to use encrypted messaging applications to communicate with other participants, and made numerous cash withdrawals structured to avoid currency transaction reporting requirements. So if you are taking out or depositing $10,000 or more of cash into your bank account on any given day, the bank have to report that to the IRS. So I guess that's what she was doing. She was taking out less than the amount required to do the reporting. So she was, as they say, she made numerous cash withdrawals structured to avoid certain transaction reporting requirements. It goes on to say, Shah, who's 48, of Park City, Utah, pled guilty today to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud in connection with telemarketing, through which she victimized 10 or more persons over the age of 55, which carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. Whoa! So the max she could get is 30 years. And the Justice Department is asking the judge to sentence her to at least 10 years. So she could get between 10 and 30 years, and yet Jen is asking them to reduce it to 3 years. What do you guys think? You think Jen is going to get at least 10 years? I think so. Based on the letter that was sent to the judge, I think so. Wait till I read this letter to you guys. I'm almost done with this here. So again, it says, Shah, 48, of Park City, Utah, pled guilty today to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud in connection with telemarketing, through which she victimized 10 or more persons over the age of 55, which carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. As part of her guilty plea, Shah agreed to forfeit $6.5 million and pay restitution of up to $9.5 million. Where's Jen getting $9.5 million? The maximum potential sentence in the case is prescribed by Congress and is provided here for informational purposes only, as Shah's sentence will be determined by the judge. Shah is scheduled to be sentenced by U.S. District Judge Sidney H. Stein on November 28, 2022. And as you guys know by now, that was pushed back to January 6th of 2023, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, or a week or so. It's right around the corner. Mr. Williams praised the outstanding investigative work of HSI's El Dorado Task Force. This case is being handled by the office's Money Laundering and Transitional Criminal Enterprise Unit. Assistant United States Attorney Kristen A. Fletcher, Bennett J. Kearney, Robert B. Sobelman, and Sheb Sweat are in charge of the prosecution. It goes on to say, if you believe you have been a victim of the scheme described above, including a victim entitled to restitution, and you wish to provide information to law enforcement and or receive notice of future developments in the case or additional information, please contact Wendy Olson Clancy, the victim witness coordinator at the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and it provides a phone number and also an email address. So yes, so this was the original press release when Jen Shah was arrested. She was arrested in, I think, March of 2021. And then on the date when she was supposed to start her trial in July of 2022 or somewhere abouts, she decided to plead guilty. Now we're going to find out why she decided to plead guilty. Because if you've been watching the show and following her on her social media site, she kept saying she's not guilty, she's not guilty, she's not guilty. So it came at a complete shock to us when she went in and pled guilty to all charges. So now this is the press release, not the press release, but this is the letter sent from the U.S. Department of Justice to the Honorable Sidney H. Stein, which is the judge that is handling the case. And this was sent on December 23rd, 2022. This is not on the Justice Department website. Well, I couldn't find it anywhere, but it was on Twitter. So I got it from Twitter, and I'm sharing it with you. So it says, regarding United States versus Jennifer Shah, and it has the case number. It says, Dear Judge Stein, the government respectfully writes in advance of the sentencing of defendant Jennifer Shah, currently scheduled for January 6, 2023 at 2:30 p.m. For nearly a decade, the defendant was an integral leader. For nearly a decade, almost 10 years. For nearly a decade, the defendant was an integral leader of a wide-ranging, nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme that victimized thousands of innocent people. Many of those people were elderly or vulnerable. Many of those people suffered significant financial hardship and damage. At the defendant's direction, victims were defrauded over and over again until they had nothing left. Oh my God. She had her co-conspirators persisted in their conduct until the victims' bank accounts were empty. Their credit cards were at their limits, and there was nothing more to take. God damn. The defendant was not deterred by the Federal Trade Commission investigations or enforcement actions, nor by learning that dozens of her co-conspirators had been arrested by federal law enforcement, pled guilty for their roles in the scheme, and that 2 were convicted at trial. So even though Jen knew that she was being investigated by the FTC, she knew that her co-conspirators were arrested. Some of them took plea deal. Some of them went to trial and lost, because as you know, if you go up against the federal government in court, you are going to lose because they always have their case super tight. So it's best for you to take a plea deal and move on with your life. Go do your time, then move on with your life. But 2 of them decided to go to trial, and of course they lost. They guess they didn't know that you don't go up against the federal government. So even though Jen knew all of this was going on, she kept going on with her telemarketing scheme, because I guess she had to live up to the hype that, yeah, she's rich and this is how she's getting her money. Wow. Okay, let's continue to read. To be clear, the defendant was not ignorant to these developments. She took a series of increasingly extravagant steps to conceal her criminal conduct from the authorities. She directed others to lie. She put businesses and bank accounts in the name of others. She required payment in cash. She didn't want the money trail. She instructed others to delete text messages and electronic documents. She moved some of her operations overseas. This is where she moved to Kosovo. And she tried to put computers and other evidence beyond the reach of investigators. These efforts were not short-lived in narrow scope. She engaged in years-long comprehensive effort to hide her continued role in the scheme. Despite the defendant's best efforts, she got caught. She then went on a public offensive and tried to profit off the charges by selling Justice for Jen merchandise. So I guess Jen was selling t-shirts and sweatshirts. Justice for Jen. She pled guilty at the 11th hour, which is on the day her trial was supposed to begin. After she kept saying, I have nothing, I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. She pled guilty at the 11th hour, only after receiving the government's trial exhibits and witness statements. So it's after she found out about all her other co-conspirators, what they said about her, and proof of things that she's done, that Jen must have, gone on her lawyer's advice and pled guilty. Wow. And I'm guessing she found out that if she went to trial and was found guilty, she could get the maximum of 30 years. So that's why, in my opinion, she pled guilty as well. In light of her conduct and her post-arrest behavior, her belated expression of remorse ring hollow. So they're watching the show too, They're seeing how Jen is behaving on the show, talking about I'm not guilty, how she is being towards her castmates and stuff. And they're saying that she's not showing any type of remorse about what she did because she continued to victimize people. Wow. And then in the last statement, it says the defendant is the most culpable person charged in this case. So she's the head honcho. For the reasons set forth below, she should be sentenced to a term of 120 months imprisonment. And 120 months work out to be 10 years. So that is the recommended sentences for Jen Shah from the U.S. Department of Justice to the judge. So on January 6th, we're going to see what she was sentenced to. Like I told you before, she is out there asking for 3 years only. And then at one point, I believe I saw where she was saying that can she serve it on probation? She doesn't want to do jail time. Can she do probation? 3 years jail time or 6 years probation or something to that effect I saw. It might have helped her sentencing if Jen actually did show some remorse, if she kind of behaved herself a little bit. But we're seeing how she is acting on the show. This is reality show. She's not acting. I mean, this is how you are. So now, I said I would also look at the Instagram page, the Bravo Docket of the two attorneys that break down everything that's going on with Jen. And I have some stuff here to read from the page and a little bit more after that. So, the Bravo Docket says, here are some preliminary facts and arguments from Jen Shah's sentencing memorandum. And then they say they will be diving into all things Jen Shah's sentencing. And they do have a podcast called, same name, the Bravo Docket. So if you want to, subscribe to their podcast, you will. I will put their information again so you could subscribe if you want to. So it says, Jen also submitted images under seal and a declaration expressing remorse. And this is what her declaration is. She said, my poor judgment and bad business association caused innocent people to lose their money and be victimized by investing in poorly structured businesses' products that are influenced or controlled. For that, I am genuinely sorry, and I will work for the rest of my life to make it right. Okay, so that is what she said, showing her remorse. Then they went into a deep dive of the latest memorandum. And the Bravo docket wrote, it says 30 individuals wrote letters to the court on Jen's behalf, providing statements on her character. None of them were her castmates. Let that sink in. 30 people wrote letters and none of them were her castmates, including Heather. I know on the show Heather go hard for Jen, but towards the end when Jen was so combative with her, she was like, this friendship ain't worth it. 30 people wrote letters to the court and none of them were her castmates. Okay? It says it provides a background on Jen Shah's upbringing and how she became involved in the scheme. Though details like names are redacted, it argues that who Jen was in Salt Lake City was different than who she was in New York with the fraudsters. The memorandum also suggests that the personal struggle she faces privately is different from her public denial of guilt, though the specifics are redacted. It details the impact that this will have on her sons. And Jen have two sons. I believe one is in his 20s and in medical school, and I believe one is a teenager still in high school. It details the impact this will have on her sons and mention how traumatized her younger son was and still is from the raid. Yeah, we saw that raid happen on last season 2 of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. It also mentions Real Housewives of Salt Lake City as a career path that helped to take Jen out of the fraudulent scheme, but it also paints the show as particularly scripted and highly edited. So she's trying to say that she was acting a part and they edited to make her, not in her best light, make her look worse than she is. So that's what she's coming with. And it says she is seeking a sentence of 36 months. Jen is seeking a sentence of 3 years. She's saying that the show is highly scripted and edited. I mean, come on. It can't be that bad. And she is seeking a sentence of 36 months. Now I'm going to go into the Bravo Docket's Instagram page. And I'm going to go over a couple of things, a couple of posts that they've been posting on here for the past couple of days. So the last episode or a couple of episodes when they went on the yacht for the day, we saw Jen get into a number of confrontations with people. We saw her do a few things to people. So this is a post from December 8th. And it says, how many potential crimes did Jen Shah commit on camera this week? And we have 7 slides. The first slide, it shows her and Angie K. It says, under California law, Penal Code Section 242, battery is the willful use of harmful or offensive force against another person. Battery cases often involve an injury, but any form of force or violence involving direct and indirect contact used against another person in an offensive manner can be ruled as battery. And then they go into list. Says count simply battery: spitting on someone, throwing a rock and hitting a person in the arm, or even dumping a liquid on someone's head is harmful or offensive unwanted contact with another person's body and could be charged as battery. And if you remember when they first got to the house, the Airbnb in Vegas, she didn't like the fact that Angie K seemed to be taking over her trip, as she said, and she poured a glass of champagne on Angie K's head. She thought that would have been funny, but Angie K didn't think it was funny, and neither did the rest of the castmates. And as you see, she tried to make it better by taking a glass and pouring it over her own head. And that still didn't go off well because that was just horrible. The next slide says, under California Penal Code 594, if a person vandalizes, defaces, destroys, or damages property with malicious intent, They may be charged with malicious mischief. If the property damage is $400 or more, the penalty can be up to 1 year in county jail or a fine of $10,000. And as you guys remember, she took Angie K's shoes, and Angie K said her shoes were cost $1,500, and she took Angie K's shoes and she threw them overboard when she was on the yacht into the ocean. So count 2, vandalism, over $400, and the shoes were worth $1,500. So she could potentially be put in jail for a year, county jail, and a fine of $10,000. If she didn't have all of this going on already, and if Angie K decided to file charges against her, that could have been one of the charges she could have been facing based on what she's doing on the show. So the next slide says, again, under California law, Penal Code Section 242, battery is the willful use of harmful or offensive force against another person. Battery cases often involve an injury, but any form of force or violence involving direct or indirect contact used against another person in an offensive manner can be called battery. And we remember when she pushed Lisa, when Lisa was trying to talk to her, she physically shoved her out of her space. So count 3, simply battery. Next slide. California Penal Code 374.78. A person who litters or causes to be littered, or dumps or causes to be dumped waste matter into bay, lagoon, channel, river, creek, slough, canal, lake, or reservoir, or other stream or body of water, or upon a bank, beach, or shore within 150 feet of the high water mark of a stream or body of water is guilty of a misdemeanor. And her throwing Angie K's shoes in the water is considered littering. Her throwing the charcuterie board in the water is considered littering. So that's a misdemeanor right there. And then they go on to say, we're sure we missed a couple. Let us know if you caught more potential crimes in the comments below. So reading through that was 3 crimes that she committed throughout that show, that episode, or those 2 episodes for the week. Wow. Okay, let's go into another post from the Bravo Docket. I believe one of them I just read to you. Yep, about the 30 letters that was written. And the last one, they are inviting you to actually listen to their podcast. The Bravo Docket says, we're reviewing the government sentencing memorandum for Jen Shah in depth. Scroll through for a preview as you await our upcoming episodes. Then they said the government sentencing memorandum, the numbers, the pages total 333 pages, 61 exhibits, 5 victim impact statements, and then it tells about the Justice Department 10 years in prison requested for Shah. They gave a picture of some of the exhibits. Exhibits include emails between Jen Shah and co-conspirators. And then let me zoom in and read one of the emails. So this is from 2013, April of 2013, from Jen Shah to Ryan Holt. It says, Ryan, attached is a tax file from floors that purchase leads from us. These leads are coaching buyers that purchased week ending 3/23/2013, totaling $52,294. Wow, this thing was lucrative for her. No wonder she kept doing it. Another exhibit includes text message between Jen Shah and Stuart Smith. And as you remember, Stuart was her assistant on the show. And we all kept saying when the show first started, like, why does Jen have this older gentleman as her assistant? You usually see a young girl or a young guy as her assistant, but yet she had Stuart really, really close to her. So this is a text message between Jen and Stuart. And remember, the Justice Department said they kept exchanging messages on encrypted text message platforms. So this is from, let me see if this has a date. No, this does not have a date. However, it reads, this is from Jen Shah to Store. It reads, your go-to answer is, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know is the best though, because if you don't know, you don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. So she's telling them when he's questioned, just tell him that. You don't know. I don't know. Then Stuart responds. It says, yeah, and we need to know if she's going to be a bulldog with them or not. Because if she doesn't and you have to answer questions, then I want to be prepared. But if they keep asking you questions that aren't within the scope, you can turn to Kara or say out loud, I need to take a break. Then pull her ass out and tell her you're not answering any more questions that aren't part of the scope of the subpoena. Oh, wow. So this is the messages between Jen and Stuart when they were being questioned. Another exhibit include multiple Gucci receipts and pics of Jen Shah closet. And remember, they said that they took everything in order to sell and recoup, some of the monies that they were finding counterfeit item mixed in with the real items. And then the last post on the Bravo docket says, the government's memorandum places Jen at the top of the scheme, orchestrating lead sales with full knowledge that the victims would be scammed, and points to her post-arrest behavior in which she vehemently and falsely maintained her innocence and sold merchandise profiting from her charges. Then they said the Deep Dive podcast episode coming soon. We will mention it all. So yes, guys, that is where we are within the upcoming sentencing of Jen Shah for all her involvement in the nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme. And as you see, there is a lot of us watching what's going on. So we are going to see if she will get the minimum that the U.S. Department is asking for, and if she'll get the maximum that comes with this type of case. So thank you for sticking it with me to the end. We're going to keep watching, and I will come to you with an update when everything goes down on or around January 6th. Until next time, be sure to take care of yourselves and your families. Bye-bye.